guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about how to set up a medical coding subject study schedule. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, so you all know that these shows are inspired by you all the viewers, so I got this comment on my Facebook page and I'm going to read it and then we're going to get into it. So here we go. So the viewer says, hello, I just started the AAPC CPC self-paced program a few days ago. I'm starting the fundamentals of medicine/anatomy and I don't know how long I should focus on each chapter. There are 12 chapters and I'm supposed to complete this in 3 to 4 months. All right, so when we have something like this, whenever you're starting in a subject and you don't really know how long you should spend on each subject, but you do know like your target total time that it should take you, and in this case 3 to 4 months. Me personally, I would recommend for this particular person in particular, and anybody else really who wants to begin this way, is to take the 4 months. You need the 4 months, because if you try to race through in 3 months, that's going to be really fast, because when you think about it, there are 4 weeks in a month. If you get this 12 chapters done in 3 months, you are only spending 1 week on each chapter. Now, I don't know how long each chapter is or what all is entailed because I'm not looking at the material that they are looking at. But if you want to give yourself a little bit more time and stretch it to the 4 months, which I think would be really good because, again, that medical terminology and your anatomy, that's all going to be your foundational knowledge first. That's going to be how you are going to be able to select the appropriate codes and how you're going to be able to interpret the documentation well, okay? You're going to still be learning a lot of medical terminology and anatomy along the way, but it's really important right now to get a strong grasp of those terms. And so spending the time now to learn it is going to be a really good investment for the long haul, because the people who skip this part are the people who struggle down the road because they start looking up codes thinking that, oh yeah, that's all it is, and they don't know how to interpret, and then they end up getting the wrong codes. So that's why I'm saying divide the 12 chapters by the total time. And so if you were to divide it that way over 4 months, it would be 1 week plus two or 3 days max that you would have to get through each chapter. And there's going to be some chapters that may be easier than others and some that are going to take you a little bit longer than others, but it really all depends. But if that's what you want to target and go for, then you want to make it a week, maybe a week plus 2 days. So that way you can complete it all in the 4 months time. And that will give you a little bit of extra time in between so that you're not having to study every single day. Because that's the number one thing I think, hopefully, if you hear anything in my message today, that you are not studying 7 days a week. Do not do that, guys. You will burn out. You will run for the hills really quickly because that's just too much. You need a break in between. But having a good idea like this, spending a week and plus 2 days to be able to get through these chapters, then you know that you're on the right track. You're making good pace and good time, all right? So with that said, you want to make sure that you are studying for 20 hours per week. That is the minimum time that you need to be studying. There is no excuse for not being able to hit 20 hours, even if you are working a full-time 40-hour-a-week job. You got to come home, take care of the kids, a family, dogs, cats, pigs, horses, cows, whatever. There's still time, but you have to look at those pockets of time. The person that's going through this anatomy can also be listening while they're driving around or doing errands or whatever, washing dishes. They can be listening to anatomy channels. There's Crash Course on YouTube, and that is a wonderful channel for learning medical terminology and learning anatomy. There's all kinds of channels, but that's one of my most favorite ones. And you can let your fingers do the walking, guys. Google a lot of this stuff. I get very simple questions that I do not answer anymore. Like, oh, what do you recommend, when everything that I have recommended is in the description box or it is a Google tap away. And you'll be able to find a lot of references and resources. So working through that way and having your 20 hours and knowing, okay, when I study a subject, I'm going to study for a minimum of 30 minutes, a maximum of 1 hour at a time. All right. And keep in mind, this is just the beginning part. When you get further in to the coding part, that's when you're going to start adding on more things. Okay. So if you are just solely concentrating on this medicine and anatomy part right now, that's really great. It's going to give you time to soak in a lot of that stuff, so that way you can really absorb what you're learning. But when you are studying, again, minimum of 30 minutes, maximum of 1 hour, and you take a break, whether it's a 10-minute break or 15-minute break, your brain needs time to decompress. And then you go back into it. The way that I have recommended to set up the study schedule is 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at lunchtime, 30 minutes on the drive home. If you don't drive anywhere, if you're just, at home or whatever, break it up that way, okay? But this is just to kind of give you an idea, all right? 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. And then when you come home and you are, getting the kids ready for dinner and you're making dinner and things like that, once all of that's squared away and everybody's doing their own thing, then you study for 1 hour and then you take a break and then you come back to it and then say maybe 8 o'clock. And then you study from 8 to 9. And then boom, you have 3.5 hours that you've completed in one day of study. 3.5. And then you have the rest of the evening to do whatever, sleep or whatever. And then you go at it again the next day. And when you do that in 5 consecutive days, that's 17.5 hours that you've done in 5 days. And all you need is 2.5 hours on the weekend, on a Saturday or Sunday. And then you can have the whole rest of the weekend to do whatever you want to. Learning medical billing and coding does not have to take your whole time. It can be managed in a way like this, where it is, where you can handle it, where you can handle the workload of studying. It does not have to be all of these things because you're trying to hurry up and race through and do all these things and write and highlight and tab and do all. No, just go through the exercises, read through those chapters, listen to videos on Crash Course, and there's all those ways you can incorporate learning. And all of that time counts, whether you are working through the workbook or whether you are listening to a video. All of those things count. So don't dismiss yourself where you're saying, well, all I did was watch a video because I didn't feel like reading and now I feel guilty. You shouldn't feel guilty because you were listening to something. And, even though some people only get 10% of what they listen to, it's still something. It's still better than nothing. All right. And doing your study schedule this way, where you're giving yourself 3.5 hours per day to work and you're breaking it up, giving yourself that amount of time will also allow you to have those breaks. And again, you're not going to get burnt out. Because once this first 4 months is over, where you've learned, you've got your basics down. You've got your anatomy, you got your medical terminology, where you're starting to get those basics in. And I recommend that if you have an area that you can study in, you need to put up anatomy posters. You do not have to spend money on these, guys. There's plenty of anatomy pictures that you can print out from the internet, from anywhere basically, and then you can have those hanging around so that way you can see them, and it can constantly be fresh in your mind. When you go to the doctor's office, right? You see the anatomy posters all over the doctor's office. You think that's for you? No. That is not for you. That is for the doctor. That is for the nurse practitioner, the PA. That is for them, so that they can keep that stimulus in their mind about anatomy, and they can always have it there. It's the same thing that you have to do, all right? So if you can incorporate that into your area, that is setting yourself up for success. Again, guys, it is totally possible for you to set yourself up for success and do these things where you can start to learn this stuff, all right? So once you get out of that medical terminology and that anatomy part, right? You're working on every chapter, one chapter per week. You're getting through, you made it through. Okay, good. Then you should congratulate yourself, okay? Because some people, they just get into it and they're like, this is boring. I don't want to do this. And then they just give it up. And if you do that, guys, that's something that you're always going to be doing until you learn your lesson, until you learn not to do that. Because things in life that are good take time. You have to invest in those things. And it's not always going to be the greatest and most fun thing in the world to do either. It's going to be frustrating. There's going to be times when you may be sitting there in tears because you don't get it. And it happens. It happens to all of us. I have had moments where I get really frustrated. When I was learning ICD-10 PCS, I was like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to get this? You know, and that was going through practicing, because I knew the basics, but I didn't know it in application. So doing it in application, I was like, man, this does not make sense, you know? And it wasn't until I kept at it, then that's when it clicked. But it doesn't click if you don't continue to work towards learning it, okay? So that's what you want to do, and make sure you start it that way. So now, when you're on to the medical coding part, right? That's the exciting part, right? If you have your workbook, the workbook that I recommend is in the description box below. There are 2, all right? And these 2 apply to anybody that is taking one of the 4 main medical coding certification exams. The CCS, which is the gold standard of medical coding credentials, that is a certified coding specialist. The CCA, the certified coding associate. The CCSP, which is the certified coding specialist physician-based. And there's the CPC with AAPC. And the first 3 are with AHIMA, the American Health Information Management Association. So if you're taking one of these 4, the 2 workbooks that I have in the description box below, the ICD-10-CM and ICD-10 PCS Coding Handbook with the Answers by Nellie Leon Chizen, and the CPC Study Guide. Now, yes, I said the CPC Study Guide, even though you're sitting for an AHIMA exam, because we all use the same CPT book, okay? All of us use the same CPT code set. All of us use the same ICD-10-CM code set, all right? And those scenarios are covered in the CPC Study Guide. I like the way that AAPC set that book up. It is very simple and easier to understand. It's straightforward, and that's what I like. So you can use that to help you to practice, all right? Now, I'm not going to talk about that book in particular, but I am going to talk about the Nellie book, okay? The ICD-10-CM and ICD-10 PCS Coding Handbook with the Answers. Get the one with the answers. Don't get the one without the answers, all right? Because you need to know if you're doing it correctly or not. Now, there are 21 chapters that are focused on the coding portion. Now, there's more chapters than this, but there's 21 that are dedicated to applying the codes and things like that, all right? It has those 21 chapters, plus it has the 2 sections in the back that go over like the practices, right? The little scenarios and stuff. It's a fantastic book, all right? It is really fantastic. And again, if you are taking an exam that does not require you to know about ICD-10 PCS, you can certainly skip those parts, right? Please skip those because you don't need to go over ICD-10 PCS, all right? You want to focus on the ICD-10-CM part, okay? That's the diagnosis part. Those are going to really be covered in this book. And you can, again, skip over the ICD-10 PCS part, but work through those, the ICD-10-CM coding questions, and cover up the answers and work through the workbook. So that way you can start looking up those codes. And again, there's 21 chapters that you're going to be going through. So that's going to, if you go through a chapter a week, that's going to put you at 5.5 months, roughly, to get through those 21 chapters, right? 21 chapters. It's a little over time, okay? But it's about 5 months. So what is it, 5.25? But I have it right here. Yeah, it's 5.25, right? So you want to work through that way. That's going fast, though. That's going through a chapter a week. Now, remember, you're going to have to incorporate other things like learning CPT and anything else you need to learn as far as like reimbursement and HIPAA and all this other stuff. So be careful. You don't want to bog yourself down with too many things. But if you are working the ICD-10-CM and ICD-10 PCS Coding Handbook with the Answers and the CPC Study Guide, if you're working those concurrently, meaning that you're working them at the same time, maybe you start Monday on ICD-10-CM and ICD-10 PCS, and then not Sunday, Monday, you do that. And then Tuesday, you work on the CPC study guide and you alternate that way. Just keep that stuff in mind, okay? But you're going to be working, and if you're working through a chapter a week, again, that's really fast. Now, if you take 2 weeks per chapter, I think that's a little bit more digestible, and it's going to take a little bit longer. But I always tell you guys that I recommend studying for 9 months, 12 months, or 18 months. People get very impatient with me and they say, well, Blue, no, I need to hurry up because I'm trying to do this to get a job and that kind of thing. If you are ill-equipped, you will not get a job. So you may as well learn it right. There's no sense in trying to rush through something and you're not going to understand what you're doing. Wouldn't it be better to take a little bit more time so that you do understand? So if you took 2 weeks, that'll take you to 10 and a half months to get through the Nelly book, right? And then, of course, if you're working it at the same time with the CPC study guide, it's going to take you 10 and a half months. I think that's fair. 10 and a half months to learn the coding part is fair. It's going to be easily digestible. It's going to help you to really grasp those subjects. And then you're going to be able to confidently sit for these exams without having to say, Blue, I'm a terrible test taker. You're a terrible test taker because you're either letting that stuff get in your head, like, oh, I didn't study, I didn't do this, rather than actually doing the work. And the work is not that hard, guys. All you have to do is open the book and work through the problems. Get the coding books, work through the scenarios and things like that. And by the time you know it, you will be proficient if you do it that way. I personally recommend taking 2 weeks per chapter to work through it. If you finish it earlier than 2 weeks, that's okay. That means that for whatever you missed on maybe some other weeks, you can double back and work through those. Or you can start working on the next chapter. And if that chapter takes you a little bit longer, in which some subjects are going to. Mother baby is notorious for this because a lot of people get very confused with mother baby. They also get confused with cardio. But again, guys, if you're pacing yourself well and you do a week at least, and then say you need a little bit more time, but you've already set your study schedule up for 2 weeks, then you're doing okay, all right? So that's something that you got to just keep in mind. But it is possible to do it this way and work for an hour, take a break, and then come back to it. And so that way you can just kind of practice through there. But the bottom line is, however many chapters you want to get through, that's how many weeks you want to look at. And if you know it's going to be labor intensive to learn, like with the coding, give yourself 2 weeks per chapter. So that way, even though it's going to drag it out a little bit, it's still going to give you enough time to really understand what you're doing. I get a lot of comments on my channel all the time. Somebody said that they studied in 2020 and they never went and took their test because they never felt ready. And they're still commenting today on my videos. So what does that tell you? That you have had something going on since 2020. You've completed a program. You didn't take your test in 2021. You didn't take your test in 2022. You didn't take your test in 2023. And here it is already 2024. All this time, and you still haven't taken that test because you didn't feel confident enough. Because the school didn't teach you. Or, whoever was supposed to teach you didn't teach you well enough to make you confident. There's going to be people that won't feel confident regardless of what they do. But if you are studying this way, if you are taking the time, taking those 2 weeks, taking the 10 and a half months to get through those 2 books, if you're taking those weeks, to be able to learn medical terminology and anatomy, if you invest that time, you will see results. Versus trying to do it your own way and trying to think of all these crazy ways to do things and looking at shortcuts. Shortcuts are no way in this field. No way. You do shortcuts, somebody is going to end up paying. It's either the provider, the patient, or you. And that's not what you want to do. You want to make sure that everything that you're doing is as accurate as possible. And that comes with educating yourself. And we are not teenagers where we can study like we did in high school. In high school, you didn't have a mortgage payment, you didn't have car bills, or, for some of you, student loans or anything like that. You didn't have none of that. So you could, study and not have to worry about anything, not worried to have to pay paying bills and insurance and anything like that. You don't have to worry about that. So that was your whole job. So it was easier in high school to study. But now as adults, I mean, whether you have a big family or whether you're by yourself, there's a lot of responsibility that we have. So it's hard to keep up. And it's hard to, accept that, oh, we're not studying like we used to. But this is the path to doing it correctly so that you can learn. It will take you time. If you're trying to speed through and you're looking for tips to speed through on how to study faster and how to hurry up and get done with the certification exam and so you can get out in the real world and do it fast, no, this channel is not for you guys. I will say that. If you're trying to learn this in less than 6 months from start to finish, that's ICD-10-CM, CPT, Hicks, PICS. For some of you, ICD-10 PCS, medical terminology, anatomy, patho, pharma, all of these things, medical reimbursement, medical law and ethics, all these things, and you're trying to learn this from start to finish in 6 months, my channel is not for you. My channel is not for you. And I will say that because my channel is for people who are serious about learning this. And I enjoy this field, but I also understand its impact, not just on me as somebody who's done this for years, but also for future tense, right? Because when you think about it, all the data that we collect is what people who, these statisticians, right, use to be able to predict future outcomes. And they use this information to help fund programs. They use this information to help design educational programs as well. So again, what we do impacts a lot of people, not just on the financial side, but also on the statistical side. And because of this, I understand how important it is. So I do take it seriously. And there's a lot of people that don't take stuff seriously, and that's fine. If you're one of those people that doesn't take stuff seriously, that's okay. But I take things seriously. And this is one of those things that I do not want people being taken advantage of, because I see it all the time. I see greedy schools taking advantage of people. And I see people taking advantage of new people too. But again, you have to be smart and you have to do your research. So again, if you want to do this seriously, you will take the time, look at the amount of chapters you want to go through, and you break it down by weeks. If you know it's labor intensive, give yourself an extra week. Is it going to stretch your program a little bit? Yes, it will. But at the end of the day, you are going to be prepared. Because if you are in one of those 6-month programs or 4-month programs, or heaven forbid you're in one of those 2-month programs, if you're in one of those programs, you can augment your studies with these books that I have in the description box below. Don't ask me, guys, because it's there. ICD-10-CM and ICD-10 PCS Coding Handbook with the answers and the CPC Study Guide. If the year versions that I have in the description box are not available, go to the next year, all right? You can use older books. You can use the current books. The only reason that I recommend the older books is because of the simple fact that I'm trying to save people money. That's the only reason why. But if you really insist on having the current year book, just know that 85 to 90% of that book is going to be the same as the year before, and the year before is going to be cheaper. I'm just saying. So set your study schedule up that way, all right? And again, if you want to work them concurrently, ICD-10 CM and ICD-10 PCS, or without the PCS and the CPT, set it up concurrently, working them at the same time. That's totally fine. You were able to do that in high school and study more than one subject. You can do it now. And it is totally possible, because I remember in high school we did what we called block schedules. So for the first term we had 4 classes, and then the next term we had another 4 classes, but we only did 4 classes at a time so we can have that extended time, so that's just something, it's just a suggestion. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up, but set up your study schedule, 20 hours per week, and I will probably post those sample templates again on the hours, okay? Fit it to work your schedule, get those 20 hours in. look at the amount of chapters and divide that number by the number of weeks that you want to go through, so that way you know how fast you need to go through. All right. And if you fall a little bit behind because life happens, it's okay. You get right back up on that horse and you keep going. Don't let that be the reason that you stop. I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.